While the southeast U.S. has been very active this winter, it has been mostly only widespread minor flooding, with a few points reaching moderate flood stage. However, climatology says we have a little over 2 months of potentially active rainy weather, which could lead to more flooding. Jeff, Aaron, and I will look more closely at what we might expect in the February edition of the Water Resources Outlook.
Okay, thanks, Todd. So let's look at the past precipitation as we always do on the Water Resources Outlook, and we see the 30-day precipitation pattern here with lots of reds and some purples there across the western part of the region, indicating more than 5 to 10 inches of rain since roughly Christmas. And that wet weather has led to quite a bit of minor flooding in the Tombigbee watershed during the period, as well as other rivers in Alabama and Georgia, into even upstate South Carolina. Elsewhere, it has been relatively dry across the Florida peninsula and along the Georgia and South Carolina coast. As far as departures, we see the same pattern, of course, with well above normal rainfall across parts of Mississippi, Alabama, and Georgia and into South Carolina, and deficits along the coast and across most of Florida. Looking back at the last 90-day departures, which basically gives us a feel for the cool season so far, we see wet across the northern half of the region with surpluses of 2 to as much as 10 inches, and dry to the south, where right around Tallahassee, Florida, they are running deficits more than 6 inches since early November. How has this affected stream flow? We see where we had all those surpluses, we, of course, have the streams running above to well above normal. And as a whole across the southeast, we are running near normal to above normal. Just that area down in the Florida peninsula are we seeing stream flows running below normal. It is interesting to point out that we're still near to above normal across central Florida, where rainfall has been normal to below normal, but this is the time of year when stream flows are typically lower and rainfall is limited in that area. And after a wet fall in December, we see many of the stream flows still running high. But overall, for the southeast, we've had a real recovery when it has come to stream flows since the very dry and hot September, probably one of the biggest swings we've had. And we see it here, the near record stream flow low there for the southeast as a whole in October, and now we are much above normal stream flows just a few months later. Talking about winter still, and we have to talk about snow this time of year. In many years, we might actually have some minimal snowpack in the mountains this time of year, but not this year. The southeast is free of snow. We still have plenty of weeks to go and plenty of winter and spring flood season to go as well. And here we see we are in week 5, and typically we are ramping up the flood season, and this can be an active time of year for flooding. We have had some flooding, especially across Alabama and Georgia, where it has been widespread at times this winter, but mostly minor flooding impacts. And as far as drought, the one area that we still are having some issues is that area I was talking about earlier with the precipitation deficits there in the Florida Panhandle around the Tallahassee area. We are seeing moderate drought impacts here, so hopefully we can get some rain for those folks in the next few weeks and knock out drought completely for the southeast.
Thanks, Jeff. And now looking at the short to mid-range weather, we are expecting a quiet weekend with some rain chances leading into it, as well as possibly early next week. We currently have surface low pressure over Texas and Oklahoma, producing rain over Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Louisiana. We expect this low to drift south today and then move along the Gulf Coast through the day Wednesday. This will bring rainfall chances from Mississippi to South Carolina, including Florida, as well as western portions of North Carolina and Virginia. Expected amounts are generally under a half inch, though some isolated areas could see a little bit more than that. By Thursday, that low will be moved off into the Atlantic, bringing another quiet day to most of the southeast, with perhaps some lingering rain or even wintry mix in western portions of North Carolina and Virginia. Note the rain chances being depicted here in Texas. This is associated with a weak disturbance that will move over the southeast through the day Friday. Combined with Gulf moisture and a couple of weak fronts in the area, another round of rain is expected, especially across Florida and the southern portions of the states from Alabama to North Carolina. Amounts again are expected to generally remain under a half inch. Conditions then remain quiet Saturday and through the weekend and even into early next week. Looking at the current frontal forecast from WBC for Tuesday, we can see the cold front extending from a low in the Great Lakes. This will be the next feature to bring rain, but there is still a good bit of uncertainty with when it will arrive. Looking at the overall 7-day expected rainfall totals, you can see a swath shown here in the blue colors with values in the 3/4 to 1 inch range, while much of the rest of the region remains under a ½ inch. And looking out a little bit further, the CPC is expecting above normal rainfall across the southeast in the 8 to 14 day period. And now I'll hand it off to Todd for a look at the long-range outlook.
Thanks, Aaron. And as you've just shown, it looks like the southeast U.S. will remain active, but at this time, rainfall does not look excessive. Our ENSO prediction shows Pacific Ocean temperatures remain above normal and should continue to do so into the summer and possibly into the fall. However, El Nino conditions do not seem likely, and neutral ENSO conditions will likely prevail. The Climate Prediction Center's outlook for February keeps the southeast in an active pattern, showing much of the southeast leaning towards above normal precipitation. That will mean different things for different areas. For Florida, it is the dry season, so that doesn't necessarily mean above normal flooding. However, it could mean more active weather and a better possibility of flooding there. As for the rest of the southeast, many parts of the southeast remain wet this winter. It does set up as for the potential to have more significant flooding if this does materialize. Although, as Jeff showed earlier, and I'm indicating now, the above normal is slated for areas that are a little bit below normal for the recent 30-day period, and normal on tap for many areas that have been wet. The seasonal forecast for temperatures show a continued warm trend for the southeast U.S. The potential impact of that is greening up a little earlier in the southeast and higher evapotranspiration rates across the area. Competition for water could come earlier and help keep areas from flooding. The seasonal forecast for rainfall shows a contrast between the February outlook and what you see here. This leans it towards a shift in the active track to the north, a very similar track to what it was in December and January. Since February looks normal for areas of normal northern Mississippi, Alabama, and Georgia, this would likely mean that March and April would be pretty active for those areas based on the seasonal forecast. If we are fortunate, we are rid of all the drought conditions and have just some occasional minor flooding as we head into spring with close to normal conditions everywhere. And then the late spring and early summer forecast shifts things to the east and north, where wetness remains for that period. The next 6 months look to remain active. Let's just hope that doesn't mean any significant flooding for the area. And so the bottom line, in the short term, it looks to be a continuation of the active weather pattern across the southeast. That could shift south, it could shift north a little bit, but it looks to stay active over the region, which means there's going to be a continued flooding threat across parts of the southeast U.S. As for the long term, neutral ENSO conditions don't lean us one way or the other as a whole, although in some years we have had more rain during neutral ENSO conditions. So we'll have to see, because winter should remain active, and normal to above normal rainfall across the area means the potential for continued flooding across the southeast. We plan to record our next water resources outlook on February 20th, 2020. Have a good month.